about to hear a revolution in talk radio. Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. This broadcast is being brought to you live on January 2nd. This is a Friday morning. It's about 8:01 a.m. Central Time in what was once known as the good old USA. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. During our live broadcast, we invite you to call 646-652-4620 or toll-free 888-773-4496. Before we get started, I would also like to remind our listeners to subscribe to our reminder service by visiting our website and clicking on the big subscribe icon button. You will not receive anything. We don't sell your name or anything like that or give it out for any advertising. It is simply just to notify you of our programs. So please do so. My Twitter address is @LibertyJoe for those people who twit. Now on to our show. Folks, this is the time of year that most talk show hosts, news broadcasts, etc., talk about what is to come in the following year, 2015 in this case. Well, I guess I'm no different, but I'd like to take a different approach. I think most of them take the year and say, well, this is what happened last year, and we look forward to the new year, and everything is bigger and brighter, and they, they give predictions. I don't predict anything, right? I'm not a prognosticator, as they say. I'm not a professional pontificator, but I am a realist. I went to a meeting not long ago, and I was accused of being negative. And my response was that, how could I be negative? I have 3 businesses that I run. I work all day long. A negative person stays home, does nothing, refuses to move forward. I'm always moving forward. I said, the problem that we have here is that I think I'm more of a realist than most people. I want to see things for what they truly are and not what I want them to be. Although it would be nice if everything was the way I want it to be. But that's not life. And people too often take the world to make it seem the way they want it to be. Let me give you an example. What we're going to do this morning is we're going to look back. Now, I am a disciple of Gerald Celente because Gerald Celente is a long-term trends forecaster, and he's probably one of the most successful and well-known in the world. And I subscribe to his service. He's accurate. I enjoy listening to him. He's a lot of fun, but he makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying this only because I listen to him, thus he's right, which makes me right, by the way, if I say that. But he does say things that are very, very important for our minds to adjust to. And I'll give you an example. Let's go back. Let's go back to 100 years ago. We were, in fact, a nation of productivity. 100 years ago, people were not bombarded with advertising. People weren't always picked on in order to just, to buy their product or services. We didn't have the mass media that we had today, obviously, but people were interested in one thing 100 years ago, and that was working. In other words, people, the focus 100 years ago was productivity. And we were, in fact, a nation of productive people. Now, most people worked in jobs in what we would consider horrible environments, but they worked hard. The money they made, they kept. There was hardly no taxes whatsoever. They kept their money, right? They were able to raise a family with one income. And that income usually came from a factory worker, a low-end factory worker, and he had 1, 2, or 3 kids. I shouldn't say 2, 3, or 4 kids. And they lived in an apartment, cramped. Mother stayed home, right? Because back then, people truly believed in the division of labor. You see, mom was home and she was, when a sock got a hole in it, she mended the sock. She didn't go out and buy a couple of dozen brand new socks with the latest style. She stayed home and sewed the socks. She sewed them till they were wearable again. Even if they weren't wearable, your problem. You wore them. And so she bought whatever she needed in order to prepare a meal, never went out to eat. When I was young, we went out to eat like 2 times a year. Twice a year, yeah. And we went out to eat on my mother's birthday and my father's birthday. And we usually went to something like a Chinese restaurant because it was very, very different, right? And that was it. I never recall going out to eat. I do recall always eating at home. My mother always buying stuff at this grocery store, which was right downstairs. We walked right downstairs to the grocery store and walked back out. We didn't have to walk 10 feet to go to the grocery store. We bought precisely what we needed, and she spent the day cooking. When we came home from school, my father came home from work, there was a meal prepared, and that's the way people lived. My father started his own little factory, making ladies' gloves. He was a very, very productive man. Now, my mother, on the other hand, was home, but she was a very productive woman. Think about it. What did she produce? She produced meals. She produced clothing. She sewed. And she had a sewing machine that was not electric. It was actually a pedal sewing machine. So people inherently was very, very productive. Consumption was something that was somebody else did. I recall when I was young, every 6 months or so, my mother would go shopping. And I would go with my Aunt Minnie, my mother, and we would take the train downtown and go to Bloomingdale's, downtown. And then sometimes we went from Bloomingdale, went to Macy's, went to lunch and came home. And that occurred once or twice a year. Now, this was a time where we had everything. We were very, very productive, and the focus was always on production, on what are you going to do? When you get to school, what are you going to do? When I was young, although I was a spoiled kid, I have to admit I wasn't a very good son, and I was a spoiled kid. I always talk about that. My mother didn't. I did not deserve my mother. I'll be honest with you. She was too wonderful of a person. She was a saint, and I wasn't a very nice kid. I'll be honest with you. I did a lot of things I did were just rotten and selfish, and I regret that to this day. But even when I was young, I had a shoe shine kit. And when I was old enough, and when I say old enough, I'm 8 to 9 years old, I was out in the park walking around with my shoe shine kit, homemade shoe shine kit, and I was shining shoes. And sometimes some people gave me a quarter to shine their shoes. Well, back then, a quarter was like shining someone's shoes and getting $20. It was an amazing amount of money to me. But we were always looking for ways of making a little money, and that money went a long way. We stretched it. Well, that was the America. That was an America where taxes were very low, right? Other than the World War and Korea, where weren't many foreign entanglements. Right? Our banking system was an actual banking system. When on January 25th, the day after Christmas, I would go to the bank and I would open up a Christmas club for the following year. So we not only produced, but we also saved. Now, if for those of you who don't know what a Christmas club is, and probably very few people do know what that is today, because they don't do that I don't even think they do that anymore, is that the bank gave you a coupon book, and every month you would go to the bank and give the bank, a specific amount of money. Now, in my case, I think I gave, when I was young, it was $5 a month, and then as I got older, I gave $10 a month. So by December of the following year, I would have 10 times 12, $120. Now, plus interest. Now, first of all, I was saving. When I saved that money was used for productive purposes. That money was lent out to industry, right, to increase it as an investment. And that investment industry, which grew the business cycle, which fed the Christmas cycle, fed the business cycle. So it was a well-functioning system. So when it came middle of December, I bought my Christmas presents, right? Gave them, and the day after Christmas, I did not have a penny in debt. In fact, if I was smart, I would have a few bucks left over. Now, I'm just setting the stage because this is what America used to be. Our dollars were what? Were backed by gold. That means you can literally go to the Treasury, and it said right on there, backed by gold, by the holder presenting this instrument, to U.S. Treasury. They would give you the equivalent amount of gold. You can go to Treasury and say, "Here's your piece of paper, my receipt. Please give me gold," and they would give you gold in return. And at that time, it was like $23. An ounce for gold, so you would get, a small amount of gold. And so everything was based on something of value. Everything was either investment, productivity, and value. Now, when you look back then, and then you project it to what we have, and then back in 1965, they decided to take all the silver out of the coins. With the exception, I think, of the $50, they were 40% silver until 1970, I believe. So everything you had value, right? If you had a silver coin, that silver coin was worth that amount, if not more. I mean, it was yours. It was your money. Understand that it was yours. When you earned something, when you earned money, that money had intrinsic value. And it was yours. So when you had it, you had value. No matter what happened around the world, that silver coin was acceptable anywhere around the world in exchange for something of comparable value. So it was a it was a system that worked relatively well, with the exception of the Federal Reserve, and I won't get into that. But other than that, it functioned pretty well. When I got out of college, I got a job. I was a sales promotion and advertising coordinator for all of the Federated stores, for AMC, for Federated, for Bloomingdale's, all those stores. Okay? This was 1961, I made a blistering gross per month, $362.50 a month. And I was able to live on that. I had a great job. Didn't pay anything, but that's advertising for you, Probably my favorite job. I wish I can go back, but it wasn't meant to be. Now, I just say that just to give you a comparison of where we are today. Right? Let's look. Today, everything is advertising. Everything. I mean, you can't go anywhere without getting bombarded. I want to digress for a minute. I don't watch much college football. I watch a little bit here and there, some teams that I don't associate with any of them really very, very much. Not even the teams here in Oklahoma. I sort of root for them, but I'm not one of these fanatic fans, And I thought it was interesting. Everything today, we are promoting something. We are promoting spending, not consumption, not production. We are promoting consumption. And it manifests itself in the College Bowl games. You ask why. I'll answer that question for you. Here are the names of some of the College Bowl games. Now, remember back in the old days, there was the Rose Bowl, which was the big one, I believe. They had the Rose Bowl parade. The Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the Orange Bowl. The big four bowls, right? That's what orange. Orange is not a commercial name, right? It was the name. It was for orange juice. Cotton was cotton. The Rose Bowl were roses. Very simple, right? Here are the new bowl games. Ready? Listen to this. And this all ties in to our mentality of consumption, where we are constantly being brainwashed to release ourselves of our money to spend it foolishly on things that truly have very, very little value. They may be fun to own, but very little value. Here is the Duck Commander Independence Bowl. I thought that was a kick, right? The Hyundai Sun Bowl. The New Era Pinstripe Bowl, whatever the heck that is, right? Buffalo Wild Wings Citrus Bowl. The Tax Slayer Bowl. I guess that's a company, Tax Slayer. They do tax returns. Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Goodyear Cotton Bowl. That's a shame. Cotton Bowl went from the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. The GoDaddy Bowl. That's an online service. Valero Alamo Bowl. Now, I love this one. The Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. Come on. I mean, enough that they run our country. Now we have to, their name has got to be on bowl games? Come on. Jeez, right? The Ticket City Cactus Bowl. Birmingham Bowl. The Bowl of Birmingham, I guess is Birmingham Bowl, all right. The All-State Sugar Bowl. Shame on the Sugar Bowl. All right, the Under Armour All-American Football Practice. Well, they have a practice now. They have a football practice on TV. It's called the Under Armour All-American Football Practice. Now, the only one that I know of that was left alone was the Rose Bowl. It's still called the Rose Bowl. I don't think there's any qualifier in there whatsoever. But that gives you just an idea of what the mentality of our country. When I went to Yankee Stadium, I went to Yankee Stadium. I didn't go to Pepsi Cola Yankee Stadium or whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called today. We went to the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds was where the New York Giants played. Ebbets Field was where the Dodgers played. But today it's the Pepsi Cola Bowl. It's all different. It has a commercial name to everything. And we have been brainwashed as to that's the way it is. If you have money, we want it. Now, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to tell you go over some of the telltales of our economy, and then I want you to make the decision whether or not we're going into the right direction, and then you can decide when you think this whole game was going to come to an end. Let's just stop for a break just for a second.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more. We'd like to thank attorney Constance Squires for her support of Liberty Talk Radio. If you want a comprehensive way to affordably avoid legal issues, call Constance Squires. For a free consultation, call 918-254-9283 or go online at isthyWillDone.com.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty Talk Radio.
Folks, we're back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. We do invite you to call toll-free 888-773-4496 or 646-652-4620. Please call in with your questions, your comments, and I'm getting used to a new computer system. So this is, maybe I'll miss people, I'll miss calls coming in. I'm becoming more accustomed to it. We hope this will be our first complete broadcast. And by the way, next week, hopefully, we will be split screen. Next Thursday, I hope to have Jacob Hornberger, the president of the Future Freedom Foundation. And he's a fascinating guy. And hopefully, we can have the split screen set up so that you can see him and myself both at the same time, on the rebroadcast. Anyway, and possibly, I don't know how this whole thing works, but the technical people are working it out. All right, let's take a look. We have one caller on the line. Caller, anytime you want to chime in, please feel free to do so. We have about 20 more minutes. Let's look at some of the telltales of our economy. All right, everyone's excited about the oil price coming down. Now, remember, the past couple of times the oil prices crashed, we went through a severe monetary crash afterwards. In 2007, the oil prices were way down, and bingo, it didn't help the economy. There was no direct effect, but it's not an indicator that the economy is getting better. In fact, any times that the oil prices crash significantly, that is usually followed by a crash in the economy. Now, I really don't know the reason for that, but I suspect that oil prices don't come down only because of supply and demand, of which that is a significant portion of it. I think that's probably one of the impetuses behind the price of oil going down, is that there just simply is not enough demand for all of the oil coming down. Now, as a result of that, certain countries are taking advantage of that by putting us out of business, what they call a trade war. And remember, as Gerald Sunday says, following trade wars, you have world war. You have a crash like you had in 2007, then you have a recession, which we have, and we still are in, believe it or not, although a lot of people disagree with me. And then you have currency wars, which have been going back and forth ever since, for the past 10 years we've been going through currency wars. The euro's being devaluated, the yen is being devaluated, the yuan is being devaluated. All over the world, the Brazilian currency is just going, the real is going to pot altogether, and that's cheapening their currency to get rid of product, because there's so much product out there and there just is not enough people to buy all this stuff. So they have to get rid of it. People in their own country can't buy it, so they want to load it off on somebody else. And that's what's happening with oil as well. Now, but the producers are taking advantage of that, in my opinion, because they know our fracking costs $70 a barrel. Their cost per barrel is $30. At $50 a barrel, they're making $20. We're losing $20, right? So that is a trade war. And that is what's going to be used to possibly, well, in the past that is used to precipitate some sort of world conflict. Anyway, so the price of oil going down should in fact be good because it should give more money to people's pockets to pay, to save. But again, see, I go back. My thinking is that when I save money at the pump, that money that I have, I save, I make productive. But most people go out and spend it willy-nilly. You know, many don't even pay off their credit cards. They'll just buy more crap. You know, but that is part of the psyche, and that's why what we have today is not what we had 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago. We have this paradigm shift that says it's okay to be hellaciously in debt because if you can't pay it, well, somehow the debt goes away and life goes on and you got to die anyway. I mean, this is a terrible attitude that Americans have, and it's obviously not sustainable. Right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about oil. 30% of the high yield bonds, better known as junk bonds, are in the oil industry, oil related, right? When those that issued the high yield bonds, and they gave a big yield because they were very shaky to start off with, they were giving, instead of giving 2, 3, 4%, they were giving 7, 8, 9, 10, 12%, right? When with the oil down where it is, these small companies are going to go out of existence. When they go out of existence, they're not going to be able to pay the bondholders, and you may have an entire collapse. And there's a concern about this, concern about the entire bond market, right? This is dangerous, folks, because the bond market is several times the size of the stock market. Don't watch the stock market, watch the bond market if you want to know what's going on, right? But not only that, when the oil industry starts to retract, what happens is that those people in the oil industry start losing their jobs. And this is what we see starting to happen right now. It's just starting to happen. Now, these jobs happen to be some of the highest paid jobs in the nation. You see, if we want to go back 100 years on a relative basis, people have lousier jobs today, making money that is more highly taxed, right, and has less purchasing power than it did years ago. So we have lesser jobs making less money than we did 100 years ago. This is not a prescription for prosperity. This is a prescription for absolute disaster. Now, I'm not predicting this. I'm not a prognosticator, but I am saying that this is not the right direction. It's like you know there's a cliff there and you know the road ends, and instead of putting your foot on the brake, you put the foot on the accelerator. Now, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but there's a good chance that car's going to go off the cliff. And if it's high enough and it goes down far enough, guess what, folks? The ball game's going to be over. And I'm afraid we're in that car and we are accelerating. We're not putting our foot on the brake. And we don't even care how high the cliff is. Let it go. And so these high-paid jobs are gone. Where are these people going to go? I mean, Walmart has more than enough people. The service industry has enough people. They're going to have to go in business for themselves. But it's not only that. Look at the ripple effect. What about all the contractors, all of the people who make rigs, make all sorts of things? My company, Occupational Health Testing, we go out and test people's hearings who are in noisy environments, oil industry, which is one of them, right? And we have oil-related companies in our own business portfolio that we go do work with every year. And guess what? The last time this happened, when there was a big downturn, these people went out of business. We would go to a factory that made oil-related supplies, rigs and whatever, metal stuff. And they would be 125 people. The next year when we come back, there'd be 20, 30 people. And they were reluctant to test because they didn't have the money. And if we did test, we had to wait 6 months to get our money because they just didn't have it. Now, this is not a boom. Now, if in fact people took the money they saved from gasoline and saved it, and that savings went to investment, we may see some sort of glimmer of hope. But people don't save, and for two reasons. First of all, they're not accustomed to saving, but secondly, why should you save when you get a negative interest rate? In other words, you'll get 2 or 3%. No, I'm sorry, you don't save. You get less than 1%, and you know the cost of everyday goods, meat, poultry, vegetable, that stuff is going up. Rent is going up. All these, the basics are going up. Now, a lot of other things, flat screen TVs are cheap as dirt. But things that you need from a day-to-day basis are going up with the exception of oil at this point in time. So why should you put your money in the bank when you're not going to get any interest? So what do people do with it? They spend it. And if they're not spending it, they're putting it in the stock market. Stock market's going up. People say, hey, stock market's going up. Everything is fine. See how good the stock market's doing? Well, it's people putting money in the stock market because they have no choice where to put it. They can put it in bonds, but they're not going to get any return. They can put it in high yield bonds and then watch out, So they're stuck. In fact, 40 some odd percent, I think 43 or 47% of the people who work for companies that have 401k plans, some sort of savings plan where the company will participate and give you free money, do not participate. Almost half don't participate. They don't have the money. Right? Now, let's go on. With all of this, we have hot wars around the world. They're small ones. This is reminiscent of not World War II, World War I, where you have a little hot flash here, hot flash there, and you have these alliances, whether they be NATO, whether they be the European Union, whether they be the North African Federation, whether they be the East versus the West, you name it. There's all of these alliances, many of which conflict with one another, especially in Southern Asia. This is a hotbed, and I would caution everyone that listen carefully, look carefully. You don't know when something's going to flare up and it's going to start a chain reaction. This makes me very, very uneasy. Now, if you want to know about consumer spending, this is what I love. Have you noticed that when back in the old days, and I know I say that a million times, and I'm not going to apologize for it, but back in the old days, when we went out and bought a car, you had to put a certain amount down. And of course, expensive car was $2,700. We were going with. I remember a Corvette was $3,600. I went, how can you afford that, Anyway, but you put, let's say a car was $2,000. Well, you put $500, $800 down, and sometimes even more than that. They wanted a third down, They prefer a half down. And then you went to the bank if you had to get a loan, and you got a loan, and you had to qualify for that loan. Wasn't easy. They didn't make life easy back then, It was very, and then you waited. You applied for a loan, and you waited a week, for them to determine whether or not you're going to get the money. And then you got the car, and at least when you drove the car out and it depreciated, the car was still worth more than the loan value. It sort of made sense. All that makes sense to me, but you had to qualify for the loan, and not everyone did. And if you didn't, you went to the used car lot and you bought yourself a $300 car. My friend Frenchie bought a Buick Roadmaster, 8-cylinder, straight 8, $100. Yeah, he couldn't qualify for a loan. Frenchie was a crazy guy. We had a lot of fun together, He crashed the car because he was looking at a girl walking down the street. He went, wow! And he never looked where he was going. He creamed the car in front of him. Anyway, long story, but short story, but stupid thing. But here we are. This is the way we live. Now, look at the ads today. All zeros. When I say zeros, this is what I mean. Right? Come in. 0% financing. 0% down. 0 payments for 3 months, and in fact, there's 5 zeros. I forgot what the other 2 were. In other words, we are producing cars. We are manufacturing cars. They come off the assembly line. Now, you can't stop an assembly line. Assembly line goes at a certain pace. Cars go out. cars get shipped to the dealers, they have to sell them. We are getting to a point where we are selling a lot of cars, but to subprime borrowers, buyers. Now, these are the same type of people that bought the homes back in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006 that couldn't afford the loan, the home, didn't qualify. They were subprime. I mean, these people didn't have jobs, and now we're doing the same thing to the auto industry. We say, well, we're going to shore up the housing industry, but now we're doing the same thing to the auto industry. And the amounts aren't all that different. Because way back when, 20 years ago, you can buy a house for $75,000, $100,000. But now the car costs $25,000, $35,000. Not unusual. I went to go look at a pickup truck, a basic Ford F-150. The guy wanted between $30,000 and $40,000. I'm talking script truck. I said, thank you very much, walked off the lot. I said, never happened. I'll buy myself a 53 Chevy pickup and have it totally redone, which I'm going to do someday, with a big engine in it. But I'm just saying that this is the craziness, right? So when we say car sales are up, not really. Car sales are, indebtedness is up, we're moving cars. And there's going to come a day when all of a sudden we can't sell any more cars because the subprime situation gets out of hand. Same thing with the housing market, where housing went down the tubes. When the auto industry goes down the tubes, and this is going to happen this year. It should happen this year, I'm projecting it to happen this year, that it's going to have a slowdown. It affects every industry because there's plastics, there's rubber, there's metal, there's glass, everything, electronics, everything imaginable, lubricants, everything imaginable goes into a car, just like everything imaginable goes into building a house. When that goes downhill, watch out, run, And listen, I can afford to buy any car I want. I can go out and buy myself an expensive foreign sports car. I ride around in a 1996 Subaru with about 283,000 miles on it. Runs fine, I don't throw my money away that way. I'm old-fashioned. I'm 100 years ago. I'll make that car run forever. But the money that I do save, I do invest. See, I'm still living in the old world. Now, the question is whether or not when we have our collapse, and we will have a collapse someday. Now, I'm not going to predict when, this year, next year, 10 years from now, My family will be a survivor because of this, all right? Now, housing. Housing is down the toilet. New housing starts decreased 11%. They anticipated an increase. 11%. And this is like the fourth month it's down. People don't have the money, right? We have a banking system that's too big to fail. You're no longer a depositor, you're a creditor. You give the bank money, right? And they pay you no interest. And if that bank fails, you're a creditor. You get on the list with everyone else. Now, it's guaranteed by the FDIC. I know that. But the FDIC, the amount of money that the FDIC has is minuscule compared to the amount that they're insuring. It's like saying, I'm insuring $10 billion and I have $100,000, backing it up. Ain't gonna work, folks, right? Now, if you want to know where we are, we not only have true declining incomes. They're not really going up. They're really, truly, if you look at the whole mix of things, the way people live, it's going down, or pretty stagnant, which is bad. We have a decreasing productive environment because most of the people who are working are getting older. Younger people cannot find jobs. They're not coming in. They're not replacing the old people. Old people are going back to work, getting their old jobs back, and sacrificing the young people, and they're the ones making the money, right? But these banks that are too big to fail are also too big to jail. In other words, you will lose, I will lose, they will gain. It's tails I win, heads I win, tails you lose type game, right? So the banking system cannot even be trusted anymore, right? Now, how could you have an economy that's booming, everything is fine, when you can't trust your own banking system, right? That's not good. That can't last. That will be a problem, all right? Look at our infrastructure. It is now estimated that close to $1 trillion, trillion with a T, trillion, will be needed in order just to shore up, not fix altogether, but shore up what we have. We have highways crumbling. We have overpasses that are literally falling apart that they have to close. They just don't have the money for it. So we are a nation in debt, over $8 trillion in current debt. Now, as far as the long-term debt, depending on how you calculate, what your long-term debt is, it could be anywhere from 125 trillion to $250 trillion. Now, based on 125 trillion, my wife and I are in debt on long-term liabilities. That's, Medicare, Medicaid, all these things, to the tune of as of today, over $997,000, almost $1 million. We owe the government $1 million because the government has placed me in debt. Now, is that a prescription for a strong future economy? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not an economist. Andy Sutton can answer these questions. I'm going to ask him these questions. And I feel certain he'll say, Joe, you're not wrong. You're right. It's exactly what's happening. Could you imagine that? My wife and I, the government has accumulated debt, which is our debt. If I don't pay it, my kids are going to pay it. $1 million. Now, that's based on the lowest estimate of $123 trillion long-term debt. Now, that's like saying I go to the bank, get a loan for $50,000, and pay $10,000 a year for 5 years. And someone says, how much you owe the bank? I say $10,000. You say, well, what happened to the other $40,000? That's next year. No, I owe the bank $50,000. So when we say we owe $18 trillion, that's a lie. That's like me saying I only owe the bank $10,000. We owe close to $200 trillion. Now, as far as the stock market is concerned, and we don't have time to get into it, our notional value of derivatives can be as high as $1.25 quadrillion. A derivative is a bet. There's no money involved. It's a bet. And if the bet goes wrong, you lose, someone's got to cough up. And there ain't enough money in the world to cough up $1.25 quadrillion. That's like going to a casino, putting your money, putting your chip based on red, right? The guy spins the wheel, it's black. Guy says, you bet $1 trillion. The guy says, all right, you've lost, where's your $1 trillion? I don't have it. Place goes bankrupt. There's no job growth. Disposable income is stagnant. We have an overproduction, and people are trying to get rid of stuff. Look at online. All of those online companies now are selling things for penny on a dollar. They can't get rid of stuff fast enough. Let me just end this episode. We only have about another minute by saying, folks, I'm not telling you we're going to have a crash or anything like that. I'm saying that we're heading in the wrong direction. I don't like the direction we're going into. I don't like our economy. I don't like the way we're doing things. I don't like our military involvement, and I didn't even touch on that. And that in itself should be a worry, because it may spark a world war, and I think that it will someday, and it costs tremendous. Of the $1.1 trillion budget, 2/3 of that, or $800 billion of it, went to military and military-related items. All destructive money, all money held in a very corrupt oligarchy. And by the way, we're no longer a democracy, we're an oligarchy. Please, understand, get used to it, okay? With that, Happy New Year, and we will probably be back. We'll probably be back on Monday morning with another broadcast. Stay in, all right? Stay tuned to us. Don't go away. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support. We'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, but let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there's no middle ground. Until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.